program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
We'll call the meeting to order. Thank you for joining us here tonight. If you would please be so courteous as to take your cell phones and turn them off, and so that we don't hear. If you do need to take a telephone call, if you want to excuse yourself out of this room. The procedures for the Planning Commission are as follows. The Plan Commission Chair will briefly explain what is being requested. City staff will briefly present the name of the applicant, where the site of the request is located, and surrounding land use and zoning. The Plan Commission Chairperson will ask the staff's analysis and recommendation. The applicant and his or her representative will describe the request and present their case and answer any questions the Plan Commission may have regarding the request. Applicants should include the following information in their presentation: important details of the request, why the request is being made, and why the request should be approved. The Plan Commission Chairperson will open the public hearing and will call for comments from the audience. The Planning Commission will then close the public hearing, will hold a discussion and vote on the matter. In order to pass, 5 Planning Commission members must vote for the approval. There is a yellow sheet of paper at the back of the room on the little ledge there. Please fill that out and hand it to Ned, who's going to raise his hand. When you come up to speak, please start your comments with your name and your address. Thank you. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is for public hearing recommendation, a rezoning from TR1A to R3P for 2622 Session Street.
This is the property located at Session Street and London Road. And we would note there is R3P zoning immediately to the west and across the road to the north. And this is an aerial photo then showing the property, and there are 4 plexes to the west and across the road to the north. It's vacant in the other directions. This is the preliminary plat for the project. It lays out 6 lots. The lots are combined. 1 and 2 is for a twin home, 3 and 4 for another, 5 and 6 for another. That's the site plan for the project, showing the layout of the 3 twin homes on the property. And there's your building elevation depicting the appearance, this being the front of the twin homes. There's also project narrative provided by applicant in your packet. The comprehensive plan identifies the site as being appropriate for medium density residential development, and again there is 4 plexes to the west and north. We do believe the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and would be compatible with the surrounding land uses. In terms of the preliminary plat, it creates 6 lots for twin home development. There is a notation on the preliminary plat noting the combination of 1 and 2 for one structure, 3 and 4 for another, 5 and 6 for the final structure. They will need a shared access easement. The site plan shows how the access for these 2 is combined. They need a shared access easement for that type of a situation. These lots are very long and narrow. That's because the back portion of this property is a big hill and is, for the most part, not buildable. They will need to legally define and label non-buildable on the final plat steep slopes in excess of 20%. We have sent utility easement requests to be shown on the final plat, and we did attach the city engineer's report. In terms of this site plan, they do meet their required parking with double garages for each unit. We are recommending screening along this lot line because of the garage and traffic next to the side of that twin home. They do need to provide street trees and front foundation plantings. And that front elevation does show front egress-sized windows, a door, part masonry siding for each of the structures. We've recommended approve the rezoning. We recommended approval of the plat with conditions. Again, that notation of combining lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 being placed on the final plat, providing that shared access easement, legally defining and labeling non-buildable areas in excess of 20% slope, and providing the utility easement requests. Compliance with the recommendations in the city engineer's report. That does include stormwater calculations, spot elevations for grading, and a drainage plan for their approval. We also included in the report the draft letter with recommended conditions on the site plan. And those provide the screening along that lot line and the street trees and foundation plantings for the project. With that, I'd answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Daryl? Go ahead, Commissioner Peterson.
In that, these are not duplexes, they'll be sold to 6 different individuals, or there'll be 6 different parties. Why does 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 5 and 6 have to be sold together?
So that they don't sell off a skinny lot and try to put a skinny house on it, essentially. These lots aren't wide enough to meet city code requirements as individual lots. They're only allowed as lots for a twin home type situation where half the structure's on one lot and half's on another lot.
Our approval does not require them to build the dwellings as shown on the
Oh,
plans.
it does, but we literally require them to place that on the face of the final plat so that if someone buys these lots, they realize in seeing the plat, they got to buy 2 of the lots in order to build on them.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Would the applicant like to come forward? Is the applicant here? I don't see anyone. Is there any public comment on this? I don't see any. If no one wishes to make any statement, we'll close the public hearing, and I would be looking for a motion.
I move approval with staff recommendations.
We have a motion.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any negative votes? Okay, motion passes. All right. Number 2 on the agenda tonight is a public hearing recommendation for rezoning for R1A to P Public for 1805 Menominee Street.
This is the property off of Menominee Street at Mount Washington Avenue. This is the existing park and ski jump, and the proposed rezoning is this small triangular piece of land on the south end of the property. And there is an aerial photo of the site. It's probably shot in May, and they still had snow on the site. I find that interesting. There's the clubhouse and parking, the existing ski jumps, and again, the triangular piece of land that is proposed to be added to the park site. That's the site plan then for the property, again showing clubhouse, the parking lot, the existing hill and how it would be regraded. The existing large jump sits about right here, and then the proposed new jump sits back here on that triangular piece of property that's proposed for rezoning. There's a cross section of the hill, again showing that existing jump and the proposed jump. So it's going to about double its height. Shows how it regrades the hill. I take a little bit of the hill out of there in order to get it to proper grade. And there's a rendering of the new jump on the property. Again, there's a narrative provided by applicant in your packet. Applicant is proposing to reconstruct the existing 40-meter ski jump at the site, and the project involves the removal of the existing large jump, regrading and surfacing of the hill, and then the construction of the new taller jump on the property. This involves then a rezoning of that triangle, the acceptance of that land as part of a city park, and the approval then of a site plan for the entire property. The comprehensive plan designates Mount Washington Ski Jumping Hill as a park with public zoning. This rezoning application adds that area to the size of the park. The property is essentially the backyard of Dan Mattoon, who is donating the additional land needed for this improvement, and we do believe the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the Plan Commission should recommend the acceptance of that property. The site plan shows then the location of that new taller jump, and those structural elevations illustrate its height. The Plan Commission will need to judge the compatibility of this request with the surrounding land uses. The lighting of that jump should be downcast fixtures, meeting the city standards. City engineer needs to review the regrading and drainage of that hill. The parking for this facility was increased from 8 to 11 stalls. There is no parking requirement in city code for this type of a facility. The narrative provided by applicant provides information on parking needs for these types of facilities. We have noted that for practice times, the use of this site usually works. There's some on-street parking, and it is seasonal. They do have 2 events that are held at this facility that do result in significant parking on the street in the area. The use of a shuttle service, which they suggest in their narrative, would help that situation. There's a small sign on public right-of-way. We recommend that be moved onto the property at this time. There's a small shed, we believe it's applicants, that should be moved back to proper setback up against the building in some location at this time. They have a mechanical equipment that they do note they'll be providing screening for as part of this application. Waterways and Parks Commission has recommended approval of this request. We've recommended approval with conditions. Their new lighting meets city standards, engineering approval of grading and drainage. The 2 events at this facility shall provide a shuttle service to address the parking concerns, that they move that sign, that they move the storage shed to a proper setback. With Plan Commission's review of this, they are recommending the acceptance of that additional parkland property, and again, compliance with the city engineer's report, which is attached. This includes in the drainage review for the property, and that we're accepting a 40-foot wide curb cut onto Menominee Street, which is what exists at the property at this time. With that, I'd answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening. My name is Matt Gundry. I'm with Fleming Andry and Associates. We are the designer of the ski hill and the site plan. I'm here on behalf of the Flying Eagles Ski Club and the Mattoon family, who is donating the property. Briefly, why we need this project. The largest hill that is currently on the site is a 40-meter hill. It is old. The scaffold is old. It is of an older design that no longer meets current design standards for what we would consider now modern safety standards for ski jumping. We would prefer to have a new profile. So that's why we want to replace that jump. We also want to modernize it. We want to, as you can see, some of the other hills on that site now are in plastic so that we can jump in the summer. We want to convert that largest hill also to a summer jumping facility. The reason for the size is that we go from a 30-meter jump right now, which is the next hill down, and then you go up to Silvermine, which is an HS 85. So we go from a 32-meter to an HS 85. That's a very large gap. We want a hill that sits right in the middle of that gap so that our children can transition their way up smoothly. Right now, we have to drive, approximately 2 hours to find a hill for our local kids to train on. If we get a HS 55-meter jump here, we can keep our kids here and put on less miles on our vehicles. And we can also, also with that, that hill would qualify for national championships, for junior nationals. It's just a much more useful hill for our kids. So that's the why for the hill size. Then I think Daryl explained, obviously why we need the additional property. The Mattoons have been good enough to donate that property so that we can build that larger scaffold. And I guess with that.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you. I assume that you reviewed the conditions that staff is recommending. Do you have any concerns about any of those?
Not really. I did speak with John Jensko this morning about some of the drainage issues. Some of those things we do need to sort out. We have some potential solutions. We'll continue working with the city staff to make sure that we can resolve those. This has to do with the drainage from the parking area. Right now, our parking area is right up to the property line, and the water drains to the property line. We don't have any place to put in either the drainage swale or a bioretention system in there. So we would have to possibly route that out, and one of the recommendations was that we also try to retain some of the water on the outrun area to infiltrate it there. One of the things that we're thinking about doing is draining that water from the parking lot, is capturing as much as we can, sending it out into that infiltration area, and infiltrating that and getting 100% of the TSS, the sediment removal. So I think we have a solution.
Go ahead.
And running a shuttle service for the big events is okay?
Yes, that was actually proposed by the club. We have a working relationship with a bus company here in town. So we believe that is a workable solution. Much less expensive to the club than trying to find another 60 or 80 parking stalls.
Very good. Any other questions for the applicant? I know currently there are some championships. There's a couple of weekends when there's jumps there. What kind of championships are there now?
Right now we have our club tournament.
Okay.
We have historically we've always had the winter tournament. Now with the advent of the plastic on our jumping hills, we've been able to hold guys help me out here, is it one summer tournament we've held so far? Yeah, so, but we would like to carry forward with those summer tournaments as well. And those are, we have approximately, in the winter, that's our larger turnout so far. We've had 70 competitors.
Okay.
And probably 250 spectators, something like that, that show up. A national championship, we don't have the smaller hills operational. It is only the large hill. So in terms of would there be a bigger crowd or would there be more kids jumping? No, we would expect to have probably somewhere between 35, 40 competitors on a national championship. There's 3 divisions in the U.S., and you get about 10 kids per division.
Okay.
So.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? I think that's it. Thank you for coming forward.
Thank you.
We'll now open the public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to make some comments? Fill out the yellow piece of paper at the back and hand it to Ned in the green shirt right up front. You can complete that after you speak, okay?
Sure.
Please state your name and address.
My name is Ellen Terwilliger, and my address is 105 Mount Washington Avenue in Eau Claire. I'm a neighbor, live right across the street from the ski hill. Hope you'll support this endeavor. The ski club has been a really good neighbor, And I also think that the benefit of this additional or revised and updated jump is not only a benefit to the children jumping, but it is to the community too. There are people that come in from all around the Midwest, and if junior nationals are held, it's a good destination for tourism. So they're good neighbors, and hope you'll support it.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? Okay. Anyone else who'd like to speak? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? If not, we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I move for approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
With staff recommendation.
Thank you.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We're a quiet group tonight. Then we'll call for the vote. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, the third item on the agenda tonight, for public hearing recommendation, a rezoning from TR1A to C2p to C2p Mercantile Drive.
This is the properties on Mercantile Drive next to North Claremont Avenue, north of Coleup. The existing south half of this property has C2p zoning and is approved for Hope Gospel's facility. And we're considering now rezoning the north portion of the property. The surrounding area is mostly commercially zoned. And that's an aerial photo then showing the sites. These are fourplexes, and the rest of these are all commercial type uses. Again, the existing south half of the property has C2p zoning, and this is the general development plan approved for that site. It's the facility facing south with the side of the building facing Claremont Avenue. And the reason for the rezoning is to allow them to take the same exact facility and simply turn it and face it east towards Claremont Avenue. So there's no change in what the facility is or exists on the property, but they are doubling the size of the site to allow them to make that turn of the building on the property. And there is the building elevation of what would face Claremont Avenue. Again, there's a narrative provided by applicant in your packet. Again, this is the same development already approved by Plan Commission and City Council on the south half of the site. The request rezones the north half of the site for this project and then turns the building to face Claremont Avenue. It's a 15,380 square foot building. It has 41 parking stalls on site. Applicant's narrative describes this facility as providing room for up to 46 adult men. They also have office space within the facility for 6 staff members. The facility is a combination of dwelling units, short-term stay housing, and office counseling services. The proposed zoning of the property to C2p allows dwelling units by conditional use, and then the other uses are all permitted with that zoning. For Plan Commission's consideration, we would note the provisions for review of rezoning, which is Section 1865-050 of City Code, and the provisions for review of conditional use permits, which is Section 1835-040. In terms of the rezoning, the comprehensive plan identifies the site as being appropriate for commercial development, and we believe the proposed design of the facility will be compatible with surrounding uses. We are recommending screening along the south property line due to its proximity of the existing commercial uses immediately to the south. The concern of this facility is how it may be operated and its impacts that may occur with surrounding properties. And the narrative that is provided by applicant describes these activities and the services that occur within this facility. Hope Gospel does operate these facilities already within our community. In terms of the conditional use permit, dwelling units within a C2 district are reviewed by conditional use so the Plan Commission can judge the compatibility of the request with surrounding land uses. The narrative provided by applicant notes that up to 46 men could stay at the facility. This would include 14 men in a 30-day program, 24 beds for a 12 to 16-month program, and then 8 beds for transitional housing. Applicant did provide an email noting this facility may not be started until 2018. A conditional use permit is only valid for a year, although the Plan Commission may extend that for another year, and we are recommending that for this situation so they don't have to come back again if they don't have their fundraising completed until later in 2018. We did, again, place in your packet the general development plan. It's on the screen. Final site plans consistent with that development plan would require Plan Commission approval prior to it actually being built. We also attached the city engineer's report. We've recommended approval of the rezoning. We've recommended approval of the conditional use permit with conditions. Final site plans will require Plan Commission approval, providing that buffer along the south property line, compliance with the conditions in the city engineer's report, which includes a development agreement for the extension of Mercantile Drive across the front of the property with utilities, and then drainage approval, and then finally that the conditional use permit is valid for 2 years. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Daryl? Commissioner Mitchell?
Thank you. I should remember this, but don't they already have a conditional use permit for the original general development plan?
For this one, yes.
Yeah, so why do they need another one?
Because it's now involving
2 lots.
another property, 2 lots. The conditional use permit now is only valid for that property. With this project, it's on both of these properties, so technically we are amending a conditional use permit to allow it on both properties. Okay?
Are there any other questions for Daryl? Commissioner Brenholt?
Daryl, just to confirm, there is no change in the capacity for the facility, correct, from what we had approved previously?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Peterson?
And as they finalize their plans for the building and the parking layout, it may alter from what we're seeing tonight. They will have to come back for Plan Commission approval for that, correct?
Correct. They come back with final site plans. They must be consistent with this, meaning the same or smaller. If they come back and it's bigger, then we go back through a public hearing process to amend the development plan.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? I have one.
Yes.
On the, what would be the northwest corner, it looks like the parking lot goes out into nowhere, yes. But there's not a road there,
Correct.
but it looks like there's an egress. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, you are. We're expecting that'll be one of the modifications you might see with the final site plans. The eventual plans is we have the right of way to extend the roadway all the way through.
Okay,
Again, this property remains vacant, so there'd be an expectation with the development of that property that would complete the roadway all the way through the
okay,
area. But at this time, I would expect that this will likely just be a turnaround, or maybe they'll extend a driveway back out to the road over here. It'll be one of the modifications we'll see with final site plans.
More likely, not to interrupt, but that was the driveway out to Mercantile, and then they just rotated the site plan without redrawing it.
oh, okay, okay, all right, I see what they did then. Very good.
Okay?
I have one other question.
Yes.
The northwest corner of this property now touches a residential development that is duplexes, I believe. Duplexes or fourplexes?
There are 4plexes.
Okay. Is there any reason why we would need any kind of fencing or screening there to separate it from a residential use?
Again, if that's needed, that'd be something we would look at with a final site plan.
Okay,
And they don't quite touch, that's why.
they don't,
Yeah.
okay. Very good, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions before we turn Daryl loose? I think we're done for the time being. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening. Craig Peterson, Operations Director for Hope Gospel Mission. It's pretty straightforward tonight. When we came before you last time, both the Planning Commission and the City Council asked, why is the end of your building facing Claremont? And the simple answer is that's the only way it would fit on the property. And so we were able to obtain the property next to us with the condition of zoning, and then we'll be able to face Claremont with the property. I'd like to address that last question about being very near the other development. There's a very deep ravine that takes all of the water from Gordy's under Claremont and runs it towards the water retention pool. So there's kind of a natural area there that divides the properties already.
Okay.
So any other questions?
Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any, but I have one.
Yes.
I know that we had talked the last time this was before us that there was going to be kind of a smoking recreation area outside for the gentlemen that live at the facility. Do you know where that's going to be on this new?
It would be in the back of the property. There's a back area there's a little garage and an outdoor eating area. It would be back in that area behind, so you can't see it from Claremont.
Okay.
And we do encourage our residents to quit smoking, and so there's less and less residents smoking as they go through our program. So.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to see where they'd be kind of hanging out.
In the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you also anticipate the same idea that you came the last time, that they'll be going to the Hope Gospel Center to work during the day?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. They spend about half their day in the bargain center and then half the day in our learning center on Western Avenue.
Wonderful. Very good. Are there any other questions for the applicant? I don't see any.
Okay. Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Is there anyone who would like to speak? All right, I don't see any. We'll close the public hearing. I'd be looking for a motion.
I move for approval with staff recommendations.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing recommendation for rezoning from C1AP to C1P, 3260 Birch Street.
This is the property off Birch near River Prairie Drive. And the Scobie office is to the north. There's a church to the west. It's an aerial photo of the site. The office building and the church are the nearest neighbors to the site. Existing drive's already into the property. This is the site plan then for the property, showing that existing drive going into the site, access off that existing drive to the front parking lot, the daycare facility, the back outdoor play area. And there's the church. And there are the building elevations. Again, there's a narrative provided by applicant in your packet. The facility will care for children ages 6 weeks through 12 years. They have 26 staff persons, and they operate from 5 in the morning till midnight, Monday through Friday. The comprehensive plan identifies the site as being appropriate for commercial development, and the proposed rezoning to a C1P allows a daycare center by conditional use permit. The existing zoning is an exclusive office zoning. That's why there is a need for consideration of this rezoning. We do believe the C1P is appropriate and consistent with the comprehensive plan. Daycares are reviewed by conditional use to allow Plan Commission to judge the compatibility. And we place in your report the actual general provisions. and the specific provisions applicable for daycare facilities. We would note applicant will need to secure and maintain a child care license for this facility from the state of Wisconsin, and that's the means of maintaining the proper operations for the facility. They do provide a 6-foot-high chain link fence for their outdoor play area. They have plenty of room on the site for parking, driveway access, and turnaround as required by city code. That's a 6,936 square foot building. Their parking requirement is 26 stalls. They have 33 stalls shown on the site. We are recommending a traffic control island approximately right there, and that should be landscaped as per landscape manual standards. The fire department would like that driveway widened to 20 feet instead of 18. They do need to provide a pedestrian connection from their sidewalk in front of the building out to the sidewalk on Birch Street. They do note foundation plantings with street trees. They have a trash enclosure, bike parking that needs to be designed per city standards. They have exterior lighting also that needs to be designed per city standards, and we will review the signs for this project with permits. Site grading, drainage, and other city services are also reviewed in our report. We've recommended approval of the rezoning. We've recommended approval of the conditional use permit with the condition that they secure and maintain that child care license. And we have a draft letter that recommends conditions of approval, providing 2 copies of revised site plan, adding that traffic control island, and providing a shade tree, placing shrubs within the existing traffic control island, that the street trees be approved by city forester. They add that pedestrian connection from their sidewalk out to the street, widen that driveway to 20 feet, and city engineer approval of drainage. The exterior lighting will need to meet city standards, and their bike racks will also need to meet city standards. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Daryl? Commissioner Peterson?
Do you know if they already have or they need to obtain a cross-access easement to use that existing driveway?
That was put in place back in 1989 when this project was originally built.
Okay, so they do have one.
They do have one.
Okay.
Any other questions? Commissioner Guard? Granlund?
With the slope and the swale between them and the road, the pedestrian path would need to run the full length of the parking lot to the curb cut?
Yeah, I sat and looked at that too. The normal way we're seeing it is if they can make that grade, which might be difficult, that would be the simplest. The others, we've seen them, they stripe the parking and run it out to here, and then down the driveway. One of those 2 options is what we'd expect them to do. And we'll let them choose which one makes the most sense. But that may not work, the direct route with the grade that's there, yeah.
Any other questions? Commissioner Brandholt, you have your light on? Okay. Okay.
Not anymore.
Okay, I don't think there are any. Thank you. Is the applicant here? That's okay.
Good evening. My name's Scott Rasmussen. I'm with Duran Builders, and they represent the Learning Tree. Cassie, who owns the Learning Tree, is also here if you have any questions. And it's been fun working with her staff. They have an existing facility, and this is just going to be a wonderful upgrade for them. And we really need your support. As you know, we're here on 3 levels, not only for the rezone, but the conditional use as well as the site plan. If we get your support tonight, we would look to be in the ground probably sometime in June, turn over the building in December so they can move all the little beaners in there sometime in January. So if you have any questions from a builder point of view, I'd be happy to field them.
Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any at this time.
Thank you.
You can bend the mic so it's down a little closer to you.
There you go. Hi, my name is Cassie Stokeland, and I am the owner of the Learning Tree Child Care Center. I have been the owner for almost about 5 years, and I'm just very excited about this project. It's going to be a great opportunity for us. We currently have a building that just doesn't really look like an attractive daycare building, so moving into something that would be more attractive for, for the city and for daycare purposes would be great. Also, just, we are looking at creating some new jobs for the Eau Claire area, and also I feel like it would be great for our families in the Eau Claire area to create something new and a better daycare than what we currently have.
Wonderful. Are there any questions for the applicant? I have one. How much expansion are you going to have with the new facility?
It would be about 2,500 square
Okay.
feet.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Brenholm.
Yeah, what's the capacity for for the children? I mean, how
Right
many?
now, we're licensed for 76 children, so we're hoping to add about 25 more per our license. But we do have more enrolled based on our hours that we have a lot of morning care children, night care children, because we're open till midnight.
Okay. Any anticipation or concerns about traffic and drop-offs, pickups
No.
in that area?
No,
Probably
it'll be much better than what we're at
situation
right
what you
now.
have right
Yes.
now. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I think we're good.
Thank you.
We'll open the public hearing if there's anyone who'd like to make comment. Is there anyone who'd like to make comment? Third tries the charm. All right, we'll close the public hearing, and we'd be looking for a motion.
I move for approval with staff recommendation.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. So the next item on the agenda is for recommendation, final condominium plat for the Haymarket Landing condominium.
Just one.
Did I miss? Oh, the brewing project, I'm sorry. I went right from one to the other. I'll go backwards. Rezoning from I-1 to I-2 and I-1P, 1807 North Oxford Avenue. Thank you for catching them.
This is the property on Oxford Avenue near Plat. And the surrounding zoning is a combination of industrial and central business district. And there's the aerial photo of the building and the children's theater across the road. Family video, quick trip. This is the site plan for the project showing the smaller building on the site. There's demolition involved here, a parking lot to the south. The city's going to be working on our trail to the east of the building this summer. And that's the rendering. That's a nice improvement from what's there now. Again, this is a rezoning, a certified survey map with right-of-way dedication, and then a site plan for the project. The plan shows the existing building on the site being partially demolished, and then new structure added. The floor plans show the primary use of the building will be a brewery with an accessory tasting room. The parcel right now has two zonings, I-1 and I-2, which is not appropriate, and the rezoning corrects that to an I-1P. The I-1P then limits the use of the property to the project as described in this application, and also then allows that reduced front yard setback similar to a central business district zoning, which is what we'll be seeing more of in this area. The site plan shows the front portion of this existing building actually is within the public right-of-way, and again, that's being demolished. And then the site plan shows a 8.7 foot wide area in front of the building to be dedicated as public right-of-way. That's the second part of the application. They show a 29 stall parking lot. The required parking for the tasting room capacity is 29 stalls. They have a 3 stall parking requirement based on the employee count for the brewery. They get a 10% reduction in parking since they are on a transit route, which brings them back to the 29 stalls that they show on their site plan. Their east property line is 10 foot away from the building as required by code. It's also now shown 10 foot away from the parking lot. We do recommend that that 10-foot area between the parking lot and that property line be landscaped. They have a trash enclosure, a 10-stall bike rack that needs to be designed per city standards. They show their exterior lighting. They provide a pedestrian connection all the way through the site from Oxford Avenue sidewalk all the way through to the proposed new trail. They have a loading dock up on the north end of the facility. We are recommending screening along the north side of that loading dock. Waterways and Parks Commission did review the project. They recommended approval with the condition that that area between the parking lot and their property line be landscaped. Site grading, drainage, and other city services are also reviewed in the report. We are recommending approval of the rezoning, and with that, the Planning Commission would also be recommending the certified survey map with the right-of-way dedication for the project. We provided a draft letter recommending conditions on the site plan, which provide 6 copies of a revised plan that note that 10-foot area be landscaped as described in our report. We are recommending those street trees be deferred at this time along Oxford Avenue until that street is rebuilt, or it'll just get ripped up. That trash enclosure needs to be a 6-foot high screen. Those bike stalls need to be designed per city standard. Their exterior lighting needs to be noted as per city standards, and they provide that screen along the north side of that loading dock. That CSM with the right-of-way dedication will need to be recorded before we can issue the building permits. We need city engineer approval of drainage, and we'll be reviewing their signs with permits. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Daryl? Commissioner Peterson.
With the driveway going to the loading dock on the northeast corner of the building, I noticed that's wider than just going back to that loading dock, but it looks on the first level floor plan that there's another door in the northwest corner of the building that comes off of the street that also would use that driveway. Hence, that driveway is rather wide for just that loading dock. Maybe
there is an exit door, yes, on the floor plans, and an overhead door of some sort. Yeah. I think applicant should be asked to identify what that is.
He's nodding his head that
okay.
That is another.
I'll leave the floor plan out here so they can show that.
Okay.
Well, I'll show it. That's a good question. What is that? Hopefully they're just driving in there.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening, everyone. William Glass, 6056 Inwood Drive. I don't know if I have to say that at this one. I can't. Mm-hmm. Okay. Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I'm the president of the Brewing Project, and glad to see some familiar faces from this commission. So I'll address your question right away. That door will be significantly larger than will be the door on the loading dock. Because some of our equipment is so large, it won't fit through a traditional that size. So we're leaving that as a larger opening so that when the time comes, we don't have to tear a hole in the side of the building, or we don't have to rip open the roof to get equipment in. So it'll be a large glass garage door that will be able to drive a forklift out and unload things if needed, but it won't be a normal thing. It'll just be when we get a big piece of stainless steel in.
That explains the additional width to the driveway then.
Right, and obviously we couldn't put grass there and drive heavy equipment over that.
As opposed to a poor driver going up to the storage.
Right.
Commissioner Quinn-Kemmer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Glass, are you familiar with all the conditions that are specified in the letter?
I am, as is the team of everybody back there. I know several of these things were discussed at RDA as well. They're in our development agreement, such as the screening for the loading dock itself, but everything else is totally amenable.
So there are no problems?
No problems.
None?
I don't see Steve here, so I'm not gonna, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? I don't see any. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you.
We'll open the public hearing. Would anyone else like to speak? Would anyone else like to speak? Third try. If no one else wishes to speak, then we will close the public hearing portion of the meeting, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I moved with recommendations.
We have a motion?
And a second.
And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, now that I can count, is for recommendation, final condominium plat for the Haymarket Landing condominium.
This is the Haymarket Landing condominiums on Barstow, Eau Claire Street, and the Eau Claire River. It's the new 6-story building that has been completed on the property. That's the first and upper floors above the upper floors. And then the rooftop in level 6 as you go through the various structures for this. Basically, the condo plat creates 9 commercial units and then 1 residential units, which match the existing use of the building. The basement parking level is part of the residential units on floors 2 through 6 of the building. The condo plat essentially allows the residential portion and the 9 commercial spaces in the building to be sold separately. The condominium declarations have been reviewed by the city attorney's office, and we are recommending approval.
Are there any questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Peterson.
With the condominium declaration being reviewed by the city attorney, does he have an opinion?
They have been approved.
They have been approved?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Because he reviewed the other one too. Do you know, or unless the applicant is here, what the LCE means on some of the units?
I'm going to let the applicant.
I had to take my glasses off to read it.
Yeah.
Limited common element.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening, Randy Osberg, attorney Reuter Ware for the applicant Haymarket Concepts. Basically, the project or the plat is as described by Mr. Tufte. The intent is to transfer the commercial units to Marcom so that they could manage and sell or release those. The residential units would be retained essentially by the University Foundation. The plan is to do that, or one of the reasons to do that is because they qualify for 501c3 tax-exempt financing. So if we have to have it separated to do that. So that's a primary reason for doing that. This does not affect the real estate taxability of the building. It remains taxable. The development agreement, the city attorney negotiated a separate covenant that's been recorded against the property. So it is and will remain taxable under that agreement for a long time.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Any questions for the applicant? I don't see any.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make comment? Is there anyone else who'd like to make comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. I'd be looking for a motion.
I move for approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Greg Granlund will second the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is final condominium plat for 222 Water Street condominium.
This is the final condo plat for 222 Water Street on Water Street at 3rd. And this is the existing building which is under construction on the site. There's the parking level, level 1, and then levels 2, 3, 4 and a rooftop are all identified in the condominium plat. This condo plat creates 2 units which allows the sale of the residential portion of the property to a separate owner. Unit 1 is most of the commercial space on the main floor. Unit 2 is the basement parking, a portion of the main floor, and then the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors, which are the residential units. The surface parking lot is tied to the commercial space of Unit 1. The parking lot across the alley to the north is identified as common area. Again, the condo association condominium declarations have been reviewed by the city attorney's office and approved, and we are recommending approval.
Are there any questions for Daryl? I have one.
Yes.
Of the Unit 2 that's on first floor of it, are those stairways or elevators or both?
My guess it's both. It might also be some reception or other type area too. I guess applicant could maybe address that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Would the applicant like to come forward? The applicant would want to come forward? Nope, guess not. Okay, we'll go right to the public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Are you the applicant?
No. I'm Paul Muir with Ruderware Law Firm. We represent Blue Old Real Estate Foundation. We're not the applicant here,
Okay.
so that's why it didn't come up before.
Okay.
But the question was about the first floor there. It's a mailbox bank
Oh.
and a elevators
Okay.
and a reception area.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item on the agenda is final plat for Westover Woods.
This property is located at the corner of Westover and State Street. It's that area right in there. That's the approved preliminary plat the Plan Commission looked at a couple months ago. And there is the final plat. The plat creates 7 lots for single-family development. They have now provided the utility easements around that cul-de-sac and on State Street. The final plat is consistent with the preliminary plat, and we've recommended approval.
Are there any questions for Daryl? Don't see any. Is the applicant here? Would anyone like to make public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion. Commissioner Peterson.
I'll make a motion, and I just want to point out they've held coming soon on their sign over there, so they're getting pressure, I think, to get this going, so.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next item on the agenda is final plat for Hoyam Acres 7th edition.
This is the Hoyam 7th edition at Preston and West Frank. And that's the preliminary plat, Preston and West Frank, and a new road approved by Plan Commission a few months ago, and here is the final plat for the project. This plat creates 14 lots for single-family development and then one more lot for the existing home on the property. Outlot 14 is dedicated for stormwater purposes. Outlot 13 is declared hereby owned by the abutting. That's to provide a proper setback for that existing house from the new street, since it'll become a corner lot. The name of that new street should be changed to just Hoyam Lane, since it's in general alignment with Hoyam Lane to the north. They have provided their utility easements. We've recommended approval with that name of the street being changed to Hoyam Lane. Any questions?
Are there any questions? Commissioner Peterson?
Is it Hoyam Lane or West Hoyam Lane to the north?
As it turns and then it hits the next street going that way, it then switches to West Hoyam Lane.
Okay.
And it has to do with an addressing number sequence. As you go east-west, you have a certain range, and north-south, you have a certain range, and when they start to conflict, then we have to rename streets.
Because on this it showed West Hoyam Lane going to the north, but
Yeah.
it's not till it gets around.
It's not till it hits the next street that it becomes West Hoyam.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Is the applicant here? Okay, if the applicant's not here, we'll go to public hearing. Does anyone have any comments on this project? Yeah, we'll close the public hearing then, and I'd be looking for a motion.
Also move.
We have a motion?
With the name change for this.
With the name change to the
Second.
correct Hoyam. We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item on the agenda, I'm missing a page. Thank you. Okay, item 10 on the list for approval, certified survey map, North Shore Drive.
This is the property in the North Shore of Lake Altoona off North Shore Drive in the town of Seymour. And that's the certified survey map for the property. The CSM basically takes the existing lot line, which I've highlighted in pink, and moves it about 15 feet to the east. That change results in this lot gets bigger, this lot gets smaller, and for that lot to get smaller or decrease in size, it needs a variance under the terms of city code. We place the provisions for your review in your report. We note this adjustment in the lot line does not result in an additional lot being created. It simply corrects the location of the lot line for these properties. The Plan Commission has granted a number of similar requests to this in the past, finding that there's no new lots created and it corrects a property line. We've recommended approval.
Are there any questions for Daryl? Commissioner Klinkhammer? You don't have a question? Are there any questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Is the applicant here? We'll open the public hearing. Are there any comments on this issue? I don't see any. We'll close the public hearing then, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I move for approval.
You have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Calling the question, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda for approval, certified survey map, County QS, to create 2 buildable lots in the town of Seymour.
Again, these properties north of Lake Altoona, and this is North Shore Drive as it bends the corner and becomes,
Shuttle.
thank you, Avenue. Here's the third edition of St. Andrews Park. This is actually leftover properties from the third edition. I actually found the old preliminary plat for this. It was 7 lots when it was originally approved many years ago. So now they're only asking for 2. And there's then the proposed certified survey map for the property. Again, there's a letter from applicant explaining the request. It takes this 15 acres and proposes 2 lots, one 9.5 acres, the other 5.65 acres in size. The property is within the city sewer service area and restricted to 10-acre lots. The Plan Commission can grant an exception to that standard based on the provisions we have in the report. We would note in review of those provisions that the proposed lot split creates 2 lots being larger in size than those lots to the west. The nearest utility is about 1.5 miles away. Creating the infill lots will lessen the pressure for the development outside the sewer service area. The lot split is proposed by CSM, and again, these lots will be larger than the lots that are mostly surrounding the property. And we've recommended approval.
Are there any questions for Daryl? I have one.
Yes.
Looking at those 2 lots, is the expectation that the driveways will come off of the road that's off Thistle Drive?
I believe so.
Okay.
You can
It
ask
looks like
applicant.
They also front on Shuttle, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's a county road. The county
Okay.
may have access restrictions to that, but you could
Okay.
ask applicant that question.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Is the applicant here?
Good evening, Scott Kramer with Kramer Land Design Studio. When this was originally platted, they left the 66-foot strips there for future right-of-way, assuming they were going to connect the roads and
Sure.
put in the number of lots that Daryl referenced earlier. But with the new comprehensive plan, can't do that. So we did contact the county highway department about possibly gaining access off the county highway, but it was a no-go.
Okay.
So yes, the northerly lot will be accessing from this 66-foot strip and the southern one from that. So they'll just have to build a little longer driveway than probably
Okay.
normal.
What are the county requirements for having the driveways on Shuttle?
They just told me no.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Okay. I know like on a state highway, you can only have a driveway every 500 feet. I was just wondering what it would be on a county road. So, but that's okay. As long as they have access, I'm good.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Opening the public hearing, is there anyone who'd like to make public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. I'd be looking for a motion.
I move for approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next thing on the agenda is for approval, site plan Baymont Inn and Suites at 4075 Commonwealth Avenue.
This is the Baymont, across the road from Best Buy. And they're proposing the parking lot along the, I'll call it east side of the building. Their existing parking's on, I'll call it the west side of the building. And the reason being is they're attempting to create a buildable lot here for what might be a restaurant for the hotel. Okay? And there's then the site plan again with the hotel, their existing parking lot, and then the proposed new parking lot on the east side of the hotel. There is a narrative provided by applicant. The narrative states the current parking lot area at the southwest of the hotel will be subdivided to allow for future development, and we would note that would have to come to Plan Commission for site plan approval. The parking requirement for this hotel is 85 stalls. They currently have 93 stalls on site. They're proposing to add a 40-stall parking lot, bringing their total requirement to 133 stalls, which does exceed the maximum parking requirement of code, although with future development that they are contemplating, it would bring them back into compliance likely. The Plan Commission will need to determine if the extra parking on this site should be approved based on that letter from applicant that's in your packet. They note exterior lighting, which will need to meet city standards. We are recommending they add street trees along Highway 53 and along Commonwealth Avenue. They note a 13-stall bike rack, and that needs to be designed as per attached standards of city code. Site grading, drainage, and other city services are reviewed in our report. And we provided a draft letter that has recommended conditions of approval, providing 2 copies of revised site plan, adding the street trees along Highway 53 and in front of the hotel. We need city engineer approval of drainage. They need revised drainage calculations. Engineering's also recommending that this alignment of this roadway be at a right angle. Looks like that side makes it, this side does not. There's a need to redesign that curb cut. The exterior lighting will need to meet city standards along with the bike racks. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Klinkhammer.
Thank you. In the letter with the conditions, the City of Eau Claire Engineering Department approval of drainage calculations, but it doesn't say anything about acceptance by the state regarding the discharge of excess. Does that need to be added in there, or is that included in the approval?
That'd be part of our approval. We give them a copy of that memo so they see all those things they were looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? Commissioner Mitchell.
This seems a little bit, I don't know what word to use, but strange to build this parking lot in anticipation of a possible restaurant on the other side. So if that doesn't happen, then we end up with a whole lot more parking than we need. So I guess my question is why doesn't this come at the time when the other parking lot's going to be redeveloped?
You could ask the applicant. My understanding is they want the assurance that they can do this before they actively go out and find that restaurant or whatever in front of their property, although I do know they're looking. But I'd ask the applicant that question.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I have one. I did not get a chance to drive out there in the last day or so, but where this new parking lot are there any slope issues? Or is it relatively flat there?
That's a pretty flat area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had. All right, I think we're set, Daryl.
Okay.
Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening. My name is Leonard Schreiber with Cedar Corporation, and we are here on behalf of the applicant for putting this forward. And I really don't know what's planned on going in that corner yet. That was not, told to us, but I do know the purpose of what he was looking to have done is provide enough parking so that that would be able to be done. I do believe that there's going to be a little bit excess parking after the fact even, because, you know, we are probably going to, during construction process, take up or use up more space than what is in the original parking area. Like he said, Daryl said right here, they're looking at providing that corner of something. I don't know what that's going to be, but I guess we, you know, read or viewed what comments were in the letter to us, and I think we'll be able to accommodate, you know, what the city is looking for in that.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Peterson.
I know it's up to them what they want to do with their building as far as changing the orientation, but on the opposite side of their offices now is mechanical equipment in the back. So if they have people parking in the back, they're going to have to enter the rear of the building somehow. They're going to have to put new doors in. So this is going to be...
I still think they would ask access from this side as well. They're just looking for providing additional parking here in conjunction with the front and the back.
So the guests would stay in back and have to walk all the way around and come in the front. But that's Baymont's problem, not ours, I guess. So.
Any other questions for the applicant? I do have one. Do you have any idea what the square footage of the other lot being created would be? Or have they not gotten that far yet?
They haven't gotten that far with us, no.
Okay, thank you. All right, I don't see any other questions. Thank you for coming and for being patient.
Very good, thank you.
We'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to make a comment? And I don't see anyone here for that, so we'll close the public hearing. And I'd be looking for a motion. Commissioner Peterson.
I'll make a motion to approve, but I'd like some discussion on it too.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I have the same concerns as Commissioner Mitchell, that what if the property isn't sold in front for 5-10 years? They've got this excess parking. Can we make some sort of caveat that they remove the front parking, anticipating future development of that corner, so they're not beyond the city maximum?
Yeah, that could be a condition. Another option would be postpone until they have a development project, but I assume they probably want to get going on some interior remodeling, or,
well,
but
I'm
that would be
thinking,
one option.
I'm thinking that too, plus if they get a client that wants to build out in front, they're going to want to tear up that front parking, and the back parking may not be available to the motel at the same time, so they're going to be lacking parking. So maybe that's for them to work out. So,
Commissioner Mitchell.
Well, I can't support it because I think that we could end up with this extra big parking lot and then nothing else. I think that if the applicants were that interested or serious, they might have come tonight to explain what they were going to do and how close they are to doing it. So I will be voting no.
Any other discussion? We'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Oh, I think we should do a show of hands. All those in favor? All opposed? You get it? Okay. Very good. I don't know.
It's 3 to 4, it fails.
Okay, so it fails.
It was 4 to 4. 4 to 4. Still
So
fails.
it's-
Sorry.
Still fails.
Okay. Pardon? All right. So the next item on the agenda is discussion and direction, North Riverfront Neighborhood Plan.
Wow, that was efficient tonight. We didn't know how much time we'd get to for this item, so. The Plan Commission, I think it was late 2015, approved North Riverfronts. They made a request, or neighborhood association, to update their neighborhood plan. This is the 4th plan, actually. So 3rd update. We've been working with their steering committee for over a year, 5 separate meetings to work through issues and solutions. And the last meeting back in May was to review the draft. So there's a few little edits from that draft that they saw, and then this is before you tonight. So what we're looking for from the Plan Commission is to seek your direction to set up a public hearing. If you feel that it's ready to go for a public hearing, that would be most likely July 17th, that meeting. That gives us 30 days for people, neighborhood residents, to have enough time to review the plan and to come to the public hearing to submit comments if they have any. So that's a bit about the process. I'll go over the plan more high level, and then if you have questions and want to get into more of the specifics, we can get into the policies. Hopefully you had a chance to review the large document. So we sent it out early knowing that it was going to be a full agenda. And we can definitely, field your concerns and comments during the process too. So the executive summary really lays out the major goals of the plan. And a lot of like the Randall Park, historic Randall Park neighborhood, and other more interior neighborhoods in the city, a lot of the goals are related to the housing stock. So with this, number one goal is to improve the housing stock, whether it's owner-occupied or rental, landlord-owned properties. Also, the rate of rental is very high, 80+%, and so they'd like to balance that equation a little bit more, so increase home ownership rates, encourage growth. They're open to new development, redevelopment, especially along the Williams block in between Williams and Madison, where you've got some of those businesses. So encourage new growth, capture some of that growth that the city's anticipating out to 2030. Redevelop appropriate. That means to context-sensitive type design, that when you're next to a duplex or a single-family home, that you shouldn't have, say a 5-story building right next to it. So we talk about that. Enhance the parks. They've got a great neighborhood park, North Riverfront. That was a major goal of the last plan that was accomplished. Now it's looking to enhance more the Forest Street linear park. You may be familiar with the Veterans Tribute, the proposal on that. That would be a great added asset to that park, as well as more recently, the last, say, 5-10 years, community gardens have been built there. So that park continues to be used and improved. Also, a major goal is to reconstruct Forest Street. That's planned for 2019, and that's an excellent public project to be able to enhance the streetscape for that road, to traffic calm it, to possibly add some decorative lighting as it enters into the Phoenix Park area. So that's their main entrance into the bulk of the neighborhood. And so they see that as a key public project to leverage future investment in their neighborhood for the housing stock. Prevent crime. The neighborhood does experience higher crime rates proportionally versus other parts of the city. So at all of the meetings, we would usually average 3 police officers. And so the police department showed the commitment to the neighborhood association to address their concerns and to work together on that. Proactive code enforcement, so dealing with different nuisance properties, and again, also the housing stock. And then engage the residents. They have a small committed group of their neighborhood association, but a lot of the people, they sent mailings out for surveys for this neighborhood plan, and we didn't get many, probably less than 10. So they want to engage their residents. They've got a great website, but to do that in a stronger way. And then marketplace. They feel that their proximity to downtown is a strategic benefit for them, and for ability to attract people that want to work downtown, but also to enjoy the amenities downtown, whether it's the trail or the rivers, that location. So those are the main goals that the steering committee, along with staff, we developed. Any questions about the goals?
I kind of have a question. As I was going through it, it seems like it's an oversight, but there's probably a reason why the apartment buildings that are across Madison Street but along Riverfront Terrace, why they're not included.
You're talking about down here?
Yeah, because I'm
Okay.
thinking that would bring a great deal of vitality from those tenants into the neighborhood association.
Yeah, so all of the neighborhood plans that they've had historically have never included North Barstow, that section of downtown. From a planning point of view, and the steering committee had the same concerns to try to, graft in this section here to tie the two components together. From a land use intensity point of view and a downtown plan point of view, they're separate entities, and so we advise from our plan, the comprehensive plan, to keep it as is. But from a social point of view, that they can definitely commingle, hold joint events.
I think they
There's the
should be
Phoenix
like
Park
sister groups or
Urbanites.
something, because
Mhm.
they do call themselves the Urbanites, and they have a regular kind of rotation of meetings and stuff. But many of them were homeowners, so I think that they bring a lot of vitality into revitalizing this, and it could even encourage some of the homeownership in this area of the north side.
Yeah, and we met with Scott Rogers and a few others of the Urbanites, if you will, and they also said that they want to have more strong ties with the existing neighbors. In fact, some of the residents in the apartments feel that from a perception point of view that they don't want to actually travel north because of crime concerns, and it's again perception, but they definitely want to work together from that social point of view. From a planning point of view and the boundaries, we recommended to not actually add that component because it is downtown, and the downtown plan would have to be amended too.
Okay.
So there's consequences to that decision, but logically, we can understand that point of view. So we talked that through. I think the steering committee that was part of the plan will also advocate for that same point. They've stressed that multiple times.
Could I add to that?
Yeah.
This discussion? Again, to emphasize what Ned stated, if we make this change, we're affecting the downtown chapter of the comprehensive plan. We're even affecting the comprehensive plan because of the references it makes to the downtown chapter of the comprehensive plan. And that's a big change for us to undertake all that rewrite. But the social aspects of this, as Ned stated, we've always encouraged this neighborhood, if you want to invite those folks from that area to your things, go ahead and do it. I mean,
somehow making them sister groups
Yeah.
so that there is some overlap would be a good idea while keeping them separate.
And DECI is also looking at ways to build relationships with all the neighborhood associations around downtown and to highlight the living opportunities that are outside of downtown as well, that say maybe a family doesn't want to live in an apartment building right in Phoenix Park, but real close they might have North Riverfronts, and so there's those opportunities, and I think DECI is looking to work with the neighborhood associations more to highlight the housing opportunities that are adjacent to downtown. So those relationships will be strengthened from, and that's noted in the plan as well.
Okay. Did they talk about the economic dichotomy between those two areas?
The North Barstow, we didn't do any analysis there, but this neighborhood is quite balanced in terms of the type of worker, blue collar, white collar, pink collar. So it's very balanced. That demographic information's in the plan.
Okay.
Should we move on?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, you have a question?
I do.
Go ahead.
But maybe it's premature if you're going to go in more in depth. The one thing that struck me, aside from the housing components, is the flood stage, or the, not flood stage, but floodplain. Are you going to get to that? Or
We can go there now.
All right, let's go there now. What the hell? Pardon my French.
Yeah, so
are we as a city responsible for this? I mean, and is the fact that some of this neighborhood is in a floodplain a deterrent to its redevelopment and development?
Yeah, we dedicate about 4 pages right here in the issues section because it is such a big deal. It adds cost to redevelopment. You have to bring up the property 2 feet above base flood elevation, and so that added cost. This is an example of more recent project where you had a garage that had to be built up to get it out of the floodplain. So it's the same kind of situation like you have over in North Barstow with the floodplain impacts for development. So it does add cost and is one of the barriers to be able to turn some of these properties. So we address that. We talk about what the city is able to do. Obviously, we have regulations that they have to follow the 2 feet above, as I mentioned, but also we participate in a program that actually gives discounts for the insurance, the FEMA insurance that's required. And so by doing that, I think, yeah, we're a Class 7 city that gives a 15% discount for that insurance, and then 5% discount for lower risk zones, which are the orange zones. So we're doing what we can do from the city point of view. Obviously, the levee helps too, and then some of the stormwater infrastructure is there to address when, and John can speak to this more, but if there's some of the flooding, it'll go back into the Madison Street parking lot here. That's usually where it goes in the first flood area, from what I understand.
Are you talking about when the river backs up?
Yeah, when it backs up, it will
Well,
flood right into there, right?
a couple of things. There's a number of storm sewers that come out through there, and we have a series of pneumatic plugs that we put in as the river rises to keep the water from backing up. However, the top of the dike isn't quite at the 100-year flood elevation, so if we actually do get a 100-year flood, that dike will top. And so then these properties would be at risk.
One thing we do note in the plan is by the natural hazard mitigation plan is that levee is supposed to be looked at from concern of failure, and to do an engineering study on that to see its vulnerabilities and then what needs to be done to if there needs to be an upgrade to it, whether it's height or. So that is called out in the plan as part of a policy to look at the study with engineering.
All right. I want to make sure I understand this. I know in the chapter it talks about the deficiencies of the levee. Mm-hmm. Okay, but correcting those, even the height of it, as I understand from what you just said, that doesn't solve the problem.
Depending on the event, if it's a 100-year plus event or 500, you know, it may not hold.
Some of the neighborhood is still going to be in the floodplain,
right,
regardless of what we do with the levee.
Yeah, the floodplain is going to be there still. In terms of the risk potential with that levee, you know, there might be some opportunities to improve that levee, but the floodplain is a FEMA designated zone. That's something that there can be map amendments to it, but we would have to file that if it met those conditions.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a couple of floodplain questions? The biggest issue with floodplain that I see is that for anyone who purchases a home that's in a floodplain, they have to buy flood insurance. The last two experiences I had with flood insurance, which were not extraordinary houses, the flood insurance was about $3,700 a year, which makes it really very unaffordable for people, and that is a significant deterrent for people buying a house in any floodplain. But here's a couple questions for you. If the levee was brought up to the 100-year mark, could the floodplain maps be redrawn and reapproved by FEMA to remove a portion of that from the floodplain? Is that a possibility? And when is the last time that the flood maps in Eau Claire were redone? The last time I remember was 94.
2009.
Yeah.
Oh, they did upgrade them, okay. Was any of this area removed from the floodplain when they did it, or not?
Yes. Okay. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, not a lot. I mean, the biggest areas that have been removed have been more related to the Haymarket project.
Sure.
You know, and you can still see with the North Barstow that that's still in the floodplain.
Yes.
But the North Barstow has a lower.
Yeah, I turned that layer off because I didn't want to muddy up the map, but there are various little map revision sites that will show up on the maps.
Like the Excel substation and the parking lot at the corner of Madison and
Okay.
on the northeast side. That was brought up out of the floodplain.
And there are various properties within North Riverfronts too that have those as well.
Okay.
But they're very specific, not the whole neighborhood.
So I know the new apartment buildings that were built, and this is not North Riverfronts, but it's a question I have, is there is underground parking, and obviously the underground parking is below the floodplain. So how do they keep those garages from flooding?
Is
there a mechanism? Or
the property's brought up and out of the floodplain, it's removed then from the FEMA maps.
But that's just living area.
Right, they construct the garages
But it's
below
also-
the flood elevation. They're flood proofed in terms of water can't run in across ground into the structure.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Right.
garage entrance is above the 100-year floodplain.
Okay, but the water couldn't seep in through the ground?
If they construct them properly, it shouldn't be seeping in
Okay.
through the ground.
And maintained properly.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Sorry, that's a tangent.
Nothing's
I have a
invincible.
Go ahead.
So I just want to know, what are we doing here tonight? We seem to be digging into the merits of this. Is that what we're supposed to be doing, or are we just supposed to say, yeah, is this discussion mean it's not ready for public hearing? Or are we saying, yeah, it's ready for public hearing, but we're just interested in the floodplain?
It's under discussion, so, these topics are good to talk about, and if you want revisions, we can make them before the public hearing. If you feel like the plan needs to, be on pause before a public hearing, we can do that, or if you feel like, it's ready for public hearing, but make these changes or edits, then we can move forward with a public hearing.
Commissioner
It's your call.
Peterson first.
John, how accurate are the FEMA maps downtown? So I had a friend just north of the North Crossing that had the same mortgage insurance. And when I was a professional engineer, I showed he was 8 feet above the 100-year flood. And the FEMA map showed his house being within the 100-year flood zone.
And that can happen.
Totally inaccurate.
And often does. They have, how shall I say this? It's rather sophisticated modeling based on aerial photography taken from 4,000 or 5,000 feet in the air. So there's discrepancies. And typically what happens in a case like your acquaintance, that if somebody wants to make an improvement or believes they're out of the floodplain, they will actually get a survey. So we'll have an on-the-ground measurement of what that property is. We'll compare that to the FEMA cross-sections of what they're saying the 100-year floodplain is at that location, and compare the two. And if their survey shows them above that elevation, then there is a letter of map amendment or revision, whatever process they go through.
It's called a LOMA.
And it's done by an on-the-ground survey, because the aerial survey is not as accurate, it's not even as accurate as our survey, but we paid extra money for a small chunk. They're flying a whole river system at a time.
Yeah.
So there are inaccuracies.
Yeah, there certainly are.
We can see them as we come through town.
Commissioner Klinkhammer.
I apologize if I'm going in a direction that is inappropriate for this presentation. From my reading of it, I felt that it would certainly be ready for a hearing. I'm just asking the questions for my own edification as a city council person. I mean, are we supposed to be doing something about this as a city? And I don't know any other time where the subject has come up where I could ask the question.
And just for the council members to know that back in '93, we used FEMA money and acquired 20-plus homes along the west side of 4th Street and removed all those. So that there was a major effort
After the flood.
to correct the problem at that time.
And along First Avenue.
Yes.
And there have been grants applied for that dike, to study that dike and to improve it, but we've not received.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to imply we shouldn't have this discussion. I thought we would have it, though, the night of the public hearing is all. So.
In order to really say that I think it's ready, I'd like a little bit more time to read it. So could you give us a few days to read it and maybe send an email if we have any issues or questions that we have to you? Otherwise, is that feasible?
We need a decision tonight.
You need a decision
You
tonight.
need to make a.
But it is fine if you have some edits or concerns, to
Okay.
send that to us.
Okay, all right, then I'm okay. It's just that I did not have time to read it with as much thoroughness as I'd really like to.
And there'll be, another 30 days or so, if you do want to move it forward for a public hearing, you'll have, plenty of time to review the draft that you've got right now as well. We tried to send it out a little earlier, to give you more time, but it is a big document.
Okay. So what do you need from us tonight, or is there more you'd like to
Direction for a
review?
public hearing or not?
I move for direction to a public hearing.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Oh, yes.
I was at my cousin's funeral, my cousin's husband's funeral, and I tuned in 101.9 on the way into town again. And if anyone knew Greg Kopecki from Perkins, he's my cousin's husband. Tammy Schroffnagel, 529 Hobart Street, District 26, County Board, Eau Claire, and North Riverfront's neighborhood chair. I want to point out, Jenny, thank you so much for talking about the idea of making the boomerang complete by including the Riverfront Terrace properties. We made note, or Ned made note, that we lost over 100 residents when the houses were taken out, and even more than that as they were blighted or burned over the last 100 years. In the 2004 Neighborhood Association Plan, the area under Neighborhood Association boundaries, it alludes, the current policy encourages neighborhood associations to have contiguous, non-overlapping boundaries. Association boundaries should be expanded to join these two sections. Time frame immediate. That was a directive in 2004. In 2009, the neighborhood met with the newly developing Moating properties and the residents of the Moating property, and the neighborhood and the potential neighbors voted to include that area as part of the North Riverfront's neighborhood unanimously. And we had come up with verbiage that would pertain and submitted it to city staff and had gone along thinking, okay, we'll address it when we do the neighborhood plan. And lo and behold, we start doing the plan and planning says it's too complicated. I might have made the problem myself because I was an advocate for the North Barstow bid. And when I was on the DECI board, I voted 100% with the DECI board to see that the North Barstow bid included some expansion area into our neighborhood from Barstow or Madison Street to William Street, using all of the blighted areas and areas that are in the floodplain as areas that could be improved as time goes by. And when planning points out that it's inconvenient for the downtown, I made that inconvenient by voting yes. Even in the iterance that looks at the downtown, you'll see on something like page 78, I'm not sure, but there's a purple area that shows downtown, and it's creeping into Galloway Street and into Wisconsin Street. And why isn't that something that the neighborhood had any input on? We didn't. So that's my big point on what I think of this plan. The plan is good. There's a couple of typos. This point on the boundaries is the thing that the neighborhood's going to be providing pushback. And I hope that we'll be able to come up with a solution that will allow us to amend the comprehensive plan, to amend our neighborhood plan, to amend the North Barstow Business District plan. I think, in my own mind, that's the only three things that we need to do in order to move it forward. And I guess I'm a little disappointed in people from our neighborhood who were appointed to the comprehensive plan. Jenny, we worked hard when we worked on it, and what was it, 2005? 2003. Yeah. So I support the plan. The only sticking point, in my opinion, is including the area of Riverview Terrace in our area of the neighborhood. I really say thank you to Ned and to Pat Ivory as we've worked through this. It's been a challenge. Our neighbors haven't had a issue come up that have had them hopping mad. And so we have had little participation. So we're in a point of growing, and I think the Veterans Trail thing is coming, and that is going to make people stand up and say, yay, nay, whatever, we'll see. But if we can work out the boundaries issue, I will be 100% in favor of the other information that has been updated and is being brought forward.
Okay, thank you for speaking. Okay, we'll go back to our motion on the table for scheduling a public hearing. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion?
I guess I'm a little confused. Tammy, I had a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Did the steering committee vote to approve this plan, or?
No, we were told that we're going to be coming to the plan commission meeting and present any of our thoughts as we go. Pretty much, by and large, the steering committee members said everything's good except the boundaries. And I know that's been a little bit of a pushback for Daryl and for Ned and for Pat, and especially for Pat, because he said, make the changes, vote on it as a neighborhood, and bring it back to the plan when it comes to update time. We did it, and then we were told no.
Okay.
Well, then it seems to me that if they're not 100% in favor of this plan, I don't see
Just the boundary issue.
But
If we
that's
can,
part, I mean, it's either you're for it or you're not, so you're not for it.
not without amending the boundaries.
Okay, I guess I don't see how it would be ready for public review if the
Well,
neighborhood.
I guess what I would like to do is have input from planning, because it is on the owns of planning, that part of the reason is it would make it way too hard to do, is because it would go into other plans. I know the Historic Randall Park made a big amendment to their neighborhood plan when they got the 4 or 5 story behemoth right on Water Street. That was an amendment that had to happen after a recently completed plan.
Okay. Commissioner Granlund, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Oh, I just, a different issue. Just was curious, there doesn't seem to be any, whether, I don't know if is there data about the housing defects along the Wisconsin Street parcels? No, there just isn't that data. Okay.
Daryl, did you have something you'd like to say?
This issue's very complex.
Yeah, it is.
It's not as simple as just, we're going to change the boundary here, because it impacts other planning documents. And it's interesting to hear that it's not that the plan's wrong, we just want to change a boundary. So that the planning documents, from what I'm assuming here, are all correct.
Okay.
So we want to change a boundary. So that's another interesting thing to think about, because it creates all sorts of interesting, well then, if all we're doing is changing a boundary, if you really want to just say, we want these folks attending your neighborhood association meetings, then go ask them to attend your neighborhood association meeting. If you want to change a planning boundary, it still has an impact in terms of our other planning documents, in terms of how they're referenced and things such as that. It's a change that now by state law requires us to amend our comprehensive plan, and that's a whole nother animal to get into. So that's the issue that we run into in doing this. So I guess I'll ask the question, what are we accomplishing by changing the boundary if we're not changing any of the planning policies? It seems like we're in agreement with all the planning policies.
Okay, I approached Nick Meyer about 10 years ago when they started the Neighborhood Association t-shirt project. And at about the time that he was opening the local store, that might have been 6, 7 years ago. And Nick Meyer said, I welcomed him to the neighborhood, thinking that the local store was in the neighborhood. And actually, if you look at our neighborhood plan, it ignores a lot of the properties on Dewey and Doty, especially the area up closest to where it drops off to Madison Street, where significant housing not significant, 1 or 2 houses have gone up, and they're clearly not in the neighborhood plan, but it's residential properties that went up there. Anyhow, Nick said, well, we're not part of the North Riverfront's neighborhood. Come up with some signatures and we'll come up with a t-shirt for you. We gave him 25 signatures and he's like, we don't recognize that it's an important thing that we could sell. So we're not getting buy-in from businesses because of the fact that we're not part of you.
Let me ask another question then. Are those businesses, is the Business Improvement District, is DECI, who represent the downtown, are they supportive of being part of a North Riverfront's neighborhood?
Jeff Moding was, and Jeff Moding has been a significant leader on the North Barstow bid. I haven't checked with him to see if he's changed his mind about that vote, but the neighborhood doesn't want to be disjointed. We want to have the neighborhood completed, and we'd be willing to do all the legwork necessary to make that happen.
Yes, Commissioner Klinkhammer.
The question that I was going to ask was the one that Darrell just asked. I don't know if it was a rhetorical question or not, but where the boundaries are of the North Riverside Neighborhood Association, or North Riverside neighborhood, doesn't impact what the intent of this plan is. I mean, the plan clearly illustrates what the challenges are in that neighborhood and what needs to be done and how the city has to deal with it. Now, where the boundaries are doesn't change that.
What it does change.
Let me finish,
okay.
Please. The comprehensive plan is coming back for another review in 2020, right? Okay. So if well, you won't be around to do it, but
hopefully alive.
If the language of the planning documents within the comprehensive plan need to reflect the change in the boundary of the North Riverside, it can be done then. But that shouldn't deter us from having this document reviewed at a public hearing and endorse the efforts that are included within it to make a lasting impact on this neighborhood, because it's an important neighborhood for the city and for our downtown.
Oh, Commissioner Mitchell.
And I agree. I was going to say that I thought that would be perhaps a really good compromise, and perhaps put that wording in this plan to say that when the comprehensive plan is revised next time, that the issue of boundaries should be discussed and decided then.
I think that it should be a little stronger language, not discussed, because it was in our neighborhood association plan from 2004 that it should be discussed, and now it's coming to a crux here. I don't want to have it passed off again, so I really want to work a way through this. And I guess the thing I could say about how is this going to help the neighborhood, looking at the successes of Phoenix Park and the Farmers Market, and looking at the potential for successes in the neighborhood. We have a lot of infill property that could be turned into rental or single-family residential properties, and I think it would be an easier sell to convince people to go north of the Madison Street and invest in the North Riverfront's neighborhood.
Commissioner Reinhold.
The-
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Darrell.
The one other advice I can give the Plan Commission is this has happened in the past. The Randall Park neighborhood had an adopted neighborhood plan, and the businesses on Water Street had other thoughts. And they created their own Water Street Commercial District plan. And there's not always agreement between those two entities. In there, it's a complete overlap in terms of the Randall Park plan includes Water Street, and yet Water Street Commercial District has its own plan, and there's this internal conflict that occurs as we do those planning documents. So the thing that has to occur for planning documents to have this type of an overlap or agreement is that all the people, businesses and property owners have to have a general agreement that, yeah, this is the way we want to do this planning, or it's going to create another conflict in the future. That's the only other advice I can give you looking at this situation. And that's why I asked, well, where are the property owners, Decky, the North Barstow bid, where are they on this idea of changing these boundaries?
So is moving this to a public hearing the appropriate place to get all the parties together who want to discuss this?
It's a good place to get all the parties together. I don't know if they'll all show up, is one concern. But in the end, the other thing that we need to understand, it's the Plan Commission that makes these decisions. So this is the proper place to have it, is at a Plan Commission level.
Okay. What notification methods do we use to tell the different pieces here that it's coming to a public hearing, besides just publishing it in the paper? Is there a way to notify?
Do we do property owner notifications or just the neighborhood association?
Yeah, we mailed and Tammy mailed.
Yeah, we could expand that and includes the Business Improvement District and the Decky groups to advise them of the neighborhood plan update, since that's the work that we'd be bringing forward.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Brenholz.
I believe we should take this to a public hearing and shouldn't let the boundary issue stop us from taking this to a public hearing, because I think the plan's solid. I think it's really well done, and perhaps the public hearing is the forum for, if the discussion comes up on boundaries, and I'm sure it will, so be it. And at least that then provides the foundation for possibly changes in the future, if not immediately. But I think we need to go forward with public hearing.
And I would agree, and I'd also suggest that in the interim, prior to the public hearing, we can look at some language, Ned and I, on what Kathy suggested or other ideas in terms of how to address this issue.
Okay, yeah, I think at least having the discussion during the next comprehensive plan update would be a really good idea, because I don't remember it coming up as a discussion item when we did the last comprehensive plan. And I think it would be a valuable idea, especially since the whole landscape down in this part of the city is really changing and has been for the last 25 years.
Well, one of the big acknowledgements of this plan, if I can just make that statement, is the acknowledgement that the next block now north of Madison is ready for redevelopment. That's a huge accomplishment for a neighborhood like this. We haven't seen that come out of any other the neighborhood groups around the downtown area. They seem to like what happened across the highway. They're acknowledging, okay, our neighborhood are across the road. It's time for our neighborhood to see some of that also come into our area. So it's a big accomplishment. It's a big change.
And like I said, I advocated for the North Barstow bid, enveloping part of the neighborhood with the thought that it's going to improve the neighborhood, improve the viewability of the neighborhood. That first 400 block of Forest and Hobart and North Barstow, if we took on a big project down there, that would put a different cast on that entryway into the neighborhood, I think it would change a lot of opinions about it being a scary place.
Very good. Well, if I remember right, Commissioner Peterson.
Young lady, either you or Darrell could tell me, where was the boundary, the southern boundary of the neighborhood in 2005?
Where it's on the map.
It hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed.
So it hasn't changed?
No.
But now you'd like to change it to go south of Madison Street?
North, yeah, south of Madison Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion on the table. We have a second to move this to a public hearing. Do we need to establish a date with this, or is it just at least 30 days out in the future?
Yeah, July 17th.
I would leave it at least 30 days in case there's additional legwork we may need to do.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item, code compliance items. And I have one. There is a property at 708 Eddy Street, just a couple houses past the bridge, and there are at least 10 bags of trash that are leaning against the house and are beginning to look a little unsightly. I can't tell if anyone's living in the house right now or not, but there's just 2 trash cans and piles of bags all over the place. And maybe someone should look at that. All right. Any other code compliance items? Any future agenda items? Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Then I call the meeting adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.